Hey all, this is part 2 of the top 10 classic Resident Evil clones, and it includes the rest of the games. If you still haven't seen the first part, I'll include the link above and in the description, and don't forget to check out the gaming t-shirts on my website. The link is in the description. Let's go. Plunges you into an underwater nightmare. You play as John Mayer, a former Navy SEAL, now part of the Emergency Rescue Services. You're stationed at the Big Table, an underwater naval facility. But when a space capsule crashes into the ocean, bringing a deadly alien lifeform with it, all hell breaks loose. You're tasked with surviving the horrors that unfold as the crew turns into monstrous mutants. The facility floods and oxygen supplies dwindle. It's a race against time, with tension bubbling up like a deep-sea pressure cooker. Right from the get-go, Deep Fear wears its Resident Evil influence on its sleeve. Executive producer Yuji Ishii even stated that the team aimed to emulate Resident Evil's gameplay, and it shows. You've got the fixed camera angles, tank controls, the same claustrophobic atmosphere, and all the survival horror elements of managing ammo, collecting files, and a number of puzzles. Co-director Kunihiro Shirahata also cited John Carpenter's movie The Thing as inspiration, which is evident in the game's narrative and the unsettling transformation of the crew into monstrous beings. If you're a classic gamer and you've played Deep Fear on the Saturn, then please share your experience in the comments below. Blue Stinger kicks off with a meteor crashing into Dinosaur Island, triggering a mysterious force field around the area. You play with either Elliot Ballard or Dogs Bauer, a rescue team member trapped inside this force field. Soon you discover that the island is overrun with mutated creatures, all tied to a sinister biotech corporation's experiments. As Elliot, you must navigate the island, uncover the truth, and survive the horrors lurking around every corner. Each character has different strengths and weaknesses. Elliot moves faster, can use multiple weapons, and can swim underwater for a limited time, while Dogs moves slower and can only use one weapon but can defend himself and uses his fists to fight enemies. The game is fun. I played it back on the Dreamcast, but sadly never finished it. It has a lot of weapons for an old game in that era. It has an amazing soundtrack and an okay story. The Japanese version uses an obnoxious fixed third-person camera perspectives, which compared to the early Resident Evil series, it fails miserably, while the Western version uses a third-person camera fixed behind the player character and includes an optional first-person mode. Still, Blue Stinger is unique on its own. The game is like a mix between Resident Evil, Dino Crisis, and Phantasy Star Online, with the voice cast of Sonic Adventure and a great soundtrack. If you've played it before, then share your experience with us. Carrier offers a classic survival horror experience, complete with all the genre staples like managing inventory, collecting limited ammunition, and health packs. As Jack Ingalls, you navigate the dark hallways of a naval ship overrun by mutated enemies, including invisible monsters that add to the tension. The gameplay is complemented by ambient horror sounds rather than a memorable soundtrack, which enhances the creepy atmosphere. The game also introduces a unique bioscanner system, which allows players to detect hidden enemies and objects, adding a layer of strategy to exploration. However, the game suffers from notably bad voice acting, which sometimes detracts from the immersion. Despite its flaws, Carrier delivers a suspenseful and strategic horror experience. If you compare it to Resident Evil Code Veronica, which was released around the same time, Carrier might seem easily outmatched. However, taken on its own, it offers an interesting and enjoyable playthrough for fans of the genre, so if you haven't played it yet, now is your time. There was an unreleased sequel which was supposed to be released for the PlayStation 2 in 2001. Why it got canceled is believed to do with Jaleco's financial troubles at the time. Have you played Carrier before? Galerians tells the story of Ryan Steiner, a young boy who wakes up in a hospital with no memory of who he is or how he got there. He discovers that he's been subjected to experiments, granting him psychic powers. As Ryan fights to uncover the truth, he realizes that he's part of a larger conspiracy involving artificially enhanced humans known as galerians. These superhumans are controlled by a malevolent AI named Dorothy, which seeks to exterminate humanity and replace it with her Galerian children. Rion's journey takes him through the dystopian city of Michelangelo, where he battles other Galerians and discovers the dark secrets behind his powers and his connection to Dorothy. Galerians offers a unique gameplay experience that blends traditional survival horror with a sci-fi twist. Ryan relies on his psychic abilities, which drain his mental energy and require careful management similar to conserving ammo in Resident Evil. Overusing them can lead to short-circuit mode, where Rion's powers go out of control, causing damage to enemies but also draining his health rapidly. The game's narrative and unique combat system make it more than just a copycat. It's a different take on the survival horror genre. That said, if you enjoyed the tension and resource management of Resident Evil, you might find Galerians to be a fascinating and challenging experience, despite its quirks. If you haven't played it yet, it's worth checking out. Alone in the Dark, the new Nightmare, released in 2001 on multiple platforms, including the PlayStation, Dreamcast, and PC. This game continues the legacy of the iconic Alone in the Dark series. In the new Nightmare, you can choose to play as two protagonists, Edward Carnby, a paranormal investigator, and Aline Sedrak, an archaeologist, who are drawn to Shadow Island after Carnby's close friend is mysteriously murdered. Their investigation uncovers dark secrets tied to ancient entities and cursed artifacts. The new Nightmare feels like a spiritual cousin to Capcom's series, with its fixed camera angles and inventory management, and so on. The game offers a unique blend of supernatural horror and survival mechanics, with a great industrial ambient soundtrack, which I personally love. The game is harder than most of the classic Resident Evils in my opinion, and monsters take more bullets than the normal zombie you'd find in a Resident Evil game. The game remains a solid entry in the survival horror genre, and if you haven't played this one yet, then you're missing out a lot. I have talked more in depth about this game in a previous video. You might want to check it out. I'll put a link above and a link in the description.